It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and the show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com, Opperman Report, and get yourself a free audiobook. This is one of our special broadcasts that will first be pre-recorded, and it will be going on our members section on OppermanReport.com, and then it will go into the rotation of stations that replay our recorded shows. It'll be on High Point Radio, 1700 AM and 105 FM in the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. It'll be on Penny Entertainment on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m., Talk Superstation, Cave Radio Broadcasting twice a week. On Saturday evening, 7 p.m. on CBS Radio, Para X Home Radio. Tuesday afternoons, late night in the Midlands at 4 p.m. Replay it on Wednesday night at Firehorse Network. FPRNradio.com, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also find it on Spreaker, the Opperman Report Spreaker channel. Opperman Report on TuneIn.com. Also on Stitcher Radio on demand. Of course, the Opperman Report YouTube channel. And iHeartRadio. We have a very, very special show today. Someone that I've been trying to get for a really long time. We have Dr. Dale Grifis. He's an expert on the occult. He's been a police officer for, I believe, 17 years. We have to get into all those details. Coincidentally enough, I was just doing a radio show just a couple of minutes ago. I just recorded a show with Tim Tate, who's the investigative journalist from the UK, and I was watching one of his old videos, and who popped up on there? Dale Grifis, as an expert on the show. Dale, are you there?
No, I'm hiding.
How are you?
Well, I'm alive and well, and despite of myself of trying to do goofy things, I'm up and right now. You caught me doing some research, so trying to catch up on a thing called the Ninth Circle.
Okay.
And I've had to do research over my years, and I enjoy it. So.
Well, do you remember doing that show? They did a little interview with you with Tim Tate in the UK. He had done a show about Colonel Michael Aquino. He came to Tiffin, I believe, and they asked me some questions. I guess I could say this to you, Ed. My dad was a police officer. I grew up in a relatively small town, not used to somebody from BBC England coming to Tiffin to do an interview with me, I guess. So I tried to be guarded, and I tried to give him the truth and the facts. So. Oh, well, you look great. Yeah, you look really good.
That's it.
So why don't you give us an idea about who is Dale Grifis? Okay, tell us about your career and your life. And
Well, my dad was a police officer and grew up in an orphanage here in Tiffin. My mother was raised by her father and 4 other siblings, and I graduated, went through high school, and graduated from local high school here after playing football and trying to study a little bit, and went off to about that time. Uncle Sam said, you need to spend some time in the Army. So I was drafted, come back, and got married. And my dad had been on a State Patrol, and then he was on the Tiffin Police Department, and I kind of had it ingrained in me, I guess, and I started on the police department in 1960. And 26 and a half years later, retired at the rank of captain, second in command of the department. My last bit of, while going through the police work, I had some nice accomplishments. I ran a 77 agency intelligence sharing group, and also had the opportunity to work some very unique cases. And I graduated at Terra Community College with a degree in associate's degree in criminal justice, and they asked me to start to teach over there. And I taught for a couple of years, and then I said, well, I'd like to finish up my college, so I went the following year. I went to Heidelberg College, and I had been taking courses at both colleges at the same time while going to work as a police officer. And also, while I was a police officer, I had the opportunity to be a school commander 14 different times, and I enjoyed the teaching part. And so I started to part-time teach at Terra and finished my degree at Heidelberg College. I graduated from Heidelberg College, which is now Heidelberg University. I graduated cum laude with a 3.89, and I didn't think I was too bad. During that time also, I liked the idea of getting the education. I found out that it helped. The more education you get, the more doors you can unlock, and I had worked part-time as a police officer. With the police department, I worked part-time in the prosecutor's office and any other duties, because back in those days you really didn't make much money. Things were kind of thin. I continued on, and when I was in high school, I got hurt playing football, and I had a couple knee surgeries, and they told me my knee is going to need some more stuff, and I'm not one of those that watches the Edge of Night and the Secret Storm type of stuff. I got to keep busy, so I looked around for a college that had distant learning, and this is prior to computers,
right?
That type of stuff. And I found a college in California that was involved in distance learning, and it took me 3.5 years to go through that program. During the time, Columbia Pacific had been in correspondence. It had been a state-approved college and was in correspondence with accreditation in the California area. I retired from the police department, and then I started. I worked my first case after I graduated from Heidelberg. One of the local chiefs called me, because I was the only one that had a degree in psychology in the area, and we had a kid that committed suicide, offering his body up to Satan.
Before we get to that, okay, let me ask you first. Now, when you went into the military, did you see any action overseas?
No, I was a medic and spent all my time at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, to be honest with you.
Okay, so you were a medic in the military.
Yes, I was.
Now what about when you made it all the way to captain, and this is in the Tiffin, Ohio Police Department?
Yes.
Now, okay, that's pretty impressive. Now, what kind of cases did you work on in your career as a police officer?
I worked everything from I worked white collar crime. I had the opportunity among overseeing the officers in various other cases, from traffic to criminal activity, and I had done some cases. My first case I had was a captain. I wasn't a captain more than 20 minutes. We got a phone call that they had a person from Tiffin that was deceased, and in the Toledo area, and we started working that. And we had a guy that had been missing for 3 years in Tiffin, and kind of started melding this way and that way, and lo and behold, I had confessions from an individual without getting the body back. So in the sixth time of Ohio jurisprudence, was able to get a confession and a conviction on 2 people without having a body, and it was called the transference of corpus delicti. So it's kind of an interesting case. I also worked a very large fraud case on Medicare by an individual, which had over $100,000 loss, and so I had various different cases that I worked.
And you were cop for 23 years, and you retired as captain.
Yes, I did.
So now, during that time, you must have testified hundreds of times, right?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
While you were a cop, you must have testified 100 times, 200 times, right?
Oh, yes. I learned some pitfalls of and setups by attorneys real quick. Yeah. And I learned when you had to push and when you had to shove and when it was best to silence. And I also learned to watch out for trick questions. And I'll never forget one of the questions that was asked to me. The guy was arrested for being drunk driving, and the attorney asked me, how long after a person drinks a drink does he become inebriated? Well, there's many factors there, and a simple answer of, right away will get you in trouble real quick. So I learned, helped me, and also working at the prosecutor's office part-time helps me considerably in that type of activity.
What'd you do in the prosecutor's office?
I put together felony cases for the prosecutor for the entire county, and lined up the witnesses and lined up the police testimony.
Now, back in those days, because nowadays, right, that you could take these classes, you can go to these PI conventions and stuff like that, and you could take classes on how to testify. PIs take them, cops take them, and stuff like that. They didn't have anything like that back in those days, right?
Oh, heck no. You got to be kidding me.
I know.
Now, I believe in the Ohio Peace Officers Training for new officers, they are required 3 or 6 hours on court testimony. My court testimony was baptism under fire.
Right. But everyone's was.
So. By that time also, I think when I first started that, police training really wasn't mandatory in the state of Ohio. But at the Tiffin Police Department, we had we went through 320 hours, and had to know the Ohio Revised Code pretty handily. And so, taking that all into consideration and work, once I retired or got through, I had not retired yet, but I got through my schooling at Heidelberg. I hadn't retired, got out of Heidelberg more than a week, and this officer had trouble. This kid committed suicide and offered his body up to Satan. And I was asked to do some study, or, give some ideas. And that's when I started doing a lot of research. And I had been hurt. I had another surgery I had to have. Excuse me. And at that point, I did a lot of reading on various cults and weird groups and satanic stuff and that type of activity.
So around what year was that?
Oh, gee, whiz.
Roughly.
Not 1977.
Okay, 1977. Okay. Now, so that was your first brush with that kind of occult type of satanic activity?
What was that, sir?
That was your first brush with that kind of occult?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was. And I had, again, I had spent some time with the prosecutor, and I told him, I said, this, we knew nothing about what the heck this is all about. If I can get a lateral transfer, what do you think about? Can you help me out with some of the bills to pay? He said, sure. So I got a lateral transfer, and I worked and spent some time with the LA Police Department. And I was at Topanga Canyon with the Charlie Manson group. They asked me questions about some cults from Ohio. And I spent a couple days with the intelligence group of the LA Police Department. And prior to that, had spent some time with a similar group in San Francisco. I learned about Jim Jones and from an officer who had worked that particular case. Ran into my first occult bookstore in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. Spent some real heavy time in a couple of the bookstores learning, getting my feet wet and taking a good look at what all was going on. So that added to my knowledge.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, prior to that and being exposed to this young man's suicide, did you ever have an interest or in the occult growing up, or did you even know it existed?
No, not at all.
No,
had no idea. Any of this stuff.
Now, what is your background as far as faith and religion and stuff?
I grew up as a Methodist. I married a gal who was Catholic, and when I was growing up, I was active in the church youth group and the YMCA's, group, and that's all I can, as far as background goes.
Fairly mainstream stuff, right?
What's that?
Fairly mainstream, you'd say.
Oh, yeah. Very. Yeah, down home, corn-fed, type of stuff. The only group I belonged to was either the Y-Teens or the youth group at the church or something like that.
Yeah, my daughter just started interning at her youth group at the church, and I'm so proud of this kid. She's 14 years old. She's taking it so seriously, and I got to tell you, I'm the proudest. How about you? Do you have any kids?
Yes, I do. We have 3. They're all grown. I'm busy this weekend attending the wedding of a grandson, and that's a real honor and a half. And we have 5 grandchildren and 3 children, and they've all gone into different parts of the world, and thank God none of them followed my footsteps. So.
Nobody went into law enforcement?
No.
Okay. Now, what about, did you ever try any PI work after you retired or something like that?
No. When I retired from the police department, I did some consulting and lectures around the United States, Canada. Had done some review of cases. At one time, I had as many as 4 interns helping to keep up with the paperwork, because I was getting calls from police agencies and therapists and ministers, and because they were finding graffiti, they were finding notebooks tore up, and the teachers would call me and, what does this mean and what does that mean? And I couldn't handle it by myself, so I had some interns, and luckily through this whole thing was able to help about I think 9 or 10 kids go through Heidelberg as interns. So I've lectured to about 30,000 people in about 28 states during that particular time.
In a course of how many years did you lecture to 30,000 people?
From 86 to 99.
Wow. Okay, now, in your investigations and your police work, did you ever run across Mayor Jim Rothstein, a former NYPD detective who did a lot of work investigating the Process Church of the Final Judgment?
No, but I have a very good friend by the name of Maury Terry. Maury and I used to lecture together on occasions, right. Who wrote the book about the process. Knew us about Rothstein. Says he's a good gentleman.
Yeah, Rothstein's a great guy. I love him. I love Maury Terry, too. I'm in a Facebook group with Maury Terry, and he still to this day is sharing information, fascinating stuff that comes out all the time. He's not giving up. Dog with a bone, you know? He's not...
No, one thing about Maury is you got to put up with his humor, and he's a dyed-in-the-wool sports fanatic, and kids me about my poor Indians and Browns. So I take verbal abuse from him often as far as how the Cleveland Browns do or how the Cleveland Indians are doing. So 100% good chap.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on the show. I would love to get him on the show. Maybe you can put in a good word for me, okay? If you enjoy your time.
I will. I talk with Maury about once a week.
Oh, great! Thank you. Now, Maury. A lot of people don't realize too. Maury Terry, he was an advisor for the prosecution on the O.J. Simpson trial, and also too, he got an arrest in that whole research he did with his book. He was responsible for getting an arrest and a conviction of those guys who killed Roy Radin.
Manson too.
Yeah, Metzger. Yeah, so you gotta take your hat off to Maury Terry. His work has been fruitful. You know,
he's a brutal researcher.
Right.
And I've met some good guys. Another author I met two of them that I met that impressed me was one was a guy by the name of Phil Carlo. Phil was wrote a book on child pornography and so forth, and he explained to me how some of this different types of that activity worked, and it helped me. Another one was a gentleman by the name of Joel Norris, who's wrote a book on serial killers and occultists, and he knew quite a bit about the national occult scene, an awful lot. He helped me get some good knowledge. There was a female nurse that wrote a book, and I can't, for the life of me, recall it right now, about dealing with victims of ritual abuse and trying to put the cases back together again. And I have her book, and she did a tremendous job of in documenting a satanic ritual case that had happened years prior, but now as a therapist she was helping this person with her memories.
This is Judy Byington?
What'd you say?
Could it be Judy Byington?
I'm familiar with that name, but I don't think that's it.
Okay.
Okay. And and one of the things I'm doing now is, sad to say, there has been some documenting cases of ritual abuse, and every once in a while, hardly a month goes by where I don't get a therapist giving me a call as to what to look for, because they think that they're dealing with an individual in their practice who has been ritually abused. So I'm theoretically retired, but I do help Paul Bruno, try and help them to give them places to look for research.
Now, have you ever considered writing a book?
I wrote a book with Ted Swartz called Secret Weapons.
Okay.
I've got two women who had been gone through some abuse and some behavior modification, and that's the book is called Secret Weapons, and it was put out here. I think you can get it still on Amazon.
Okay, good, great. I'll put the link up on the Opperman Report blog to the Amazon link there. Are you still getting money from it if they sell it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you still make any money from it if they sell it?
Am I making money? That was an interesting. That was probably. I haven't broke even on the book yet, but because there was a tremendous amount of research and tremendous amount of travel we had to do to get things. Now it's interesting too. At that time that the book came out, that people were still reeling from the idea of induced, being told that such stuff was not true and it was really a satanic panic type of stuff. And I look back at some stuff with all due respect. There were agencies that were trying to help us, and there were a couple inside of agencies not trying to help us. I also, in ran into some individuals in lectures. I got set up beautifully by one group up in New York one day, and being naive and still learning that there were bad guys out there. Somebody before the lecture told me that they had heard, and it had been confirmed, that 2 officers had been killed out west while going into a satanic circle. And in my closing arguments, or not arguments, but my closing comments in my speech for the day, I said, I just been informed that, that this happened. So be careful in the field. The guy stood up and said, and where was that exactly at? And I looked for the person that told me this. They were gone. They had skedaddled. So I made it a very, very hard, fast rule that due to the nature of the data, I did not use nor did I repeat information that I had not confirmed myself.
Gotcha. Because it seems like in this area, in this arena, the forces on the other side, okay, the people who kind of promote this kind of activity, this satanic ritual abuse and this kind of behavior, this is an extreme bunch that are very... They seem to have a lot of time and a lot of energy in order to harass, to stalk, to threaten, to set people up, like you said. Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If you would look at the BS I went through on the stand in the case down in South, where the 3 boys were arrested for murder, that was the most asinine piece of work by an attorney I've ever seen in my life.
But even besides what happened, we'll get into what happened at the trial there, but your contact, your exposure to that group of those supporters, of those convicted, confessed murderers who pled guilty ultimately, have you ever experienced any type of organized harassing group than that group? Or is that the most extreme?
Due to the national interest, or the national's position I was in, I didn't realize that how vulnerable I made myself.
Right.
I had the pleasure of speaking for the a group of ladies in Tipper Gore and some from the group that was against the games and the movies and the things in Washington at the National Press Club, and I gave a lecture with Dr. Benjamin Coop.
Okay.
And I talked about what police agencies were reporting to me as they were finding at the at various crime scenes, and it was graffiti with record labels and pictures of kids who committed suicide with Ozzy Osbourne's suicide solution thing, and I just was bringing it to that, and boy, did I bring on all kinds of hell upon myself because I dare go against commercial people who are making money putting this garbage out.
Right.
And now today, nobody, money talks and the BS walks, so to speak. And you listen to some of the stuff that's going on with the shootings in the schools and so forth, and I finally here about a week ago heard somebody talk of national importance. That it's not guns. You know, I never. One of the things that I have always said in with these kids that commit suicide and the various problems in the schools and that, you know, I've got 50 years of being in police work almost. I have never seen, and as a coroner's investigator for 19 years, I never seen a gun shoot anybody. And the mental health, I was president at one time of the Community Mental Health Board because I accepted the position because I wanted to improve the outreach to the community of our mental health system. Because as a policeman, I was seeing too many problems that weren't being corrected correctly. And you can't give somebody a drug, pat them on the back and say, go into society, especially when they're faltering and they need a little bit of goal setting, a little bit of TLC, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because some of the parents today just aren't doing their job. And I call them like I see them. And these people, you know, they bring them in, the young kids in today, fill them full of Ritalin or something or other, and send them on their way. And the next thing, they get impressed by something they see on television or a movie or a record, and go out and get themselves a couple handguns and going to settle the world right. And I saw this early with some of the stuff with the occultism and so forth, and I just tried to make a difference, that's all.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you testify when you were involved in the press conference with Tipper Gore and C.W. Coop? Was that before or after the West Memphis 3 stuff?
Oh, my, that was way before.
Way before, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got to agree with you. You know, kids today, they don't have the family structure like you know, we had 50 years ago, you know, with the grandparents, the uncles, you know, that structure is gone, you know. And you watch these movies and TV and video games, people are getting shot, they get up 2 seconds later, they're shooting back, you know. And you can't drum this stuff into people's heads and not expect problems. And
I saw one the other day where a kid, I couldn't believe it, they had a video of a robbery shooting, and here the kid comes in, and by the way, he lays his gun on the side while he's shooting, which is something that you see in gamers doing, and he started firing, and the guy reaches underneath the counter and takes it and fires back and nails him, and the kid yells out, "This shouldn't happen." You know, what a dose of reality. He got killed.
Yeah.
And his last words, "Oh, this shouldn't happen." Well, you shoot at somebody, they got a license to carry. Guess what? You're going to get nailed. And also, why? In one case, why was a mother buying so many weapons, or buying weapons for her son in order to appease him? And then later this woman gets killed by the same guns.
I think we have a lower standard for mental health for our children these days. You know, in the older days, if there was a kid that was acting a little strange, a little bizarre, you know, people would call it out, you know, and now it just seems to be accepted and like we just want to ignore it like it's not there. Well,
one of the things that been the orphanage that my father went to,
okay,
in 1940 early 40s, was turned over. The children were removed and moved to Kentucky to another orphanage, and the area was turned into a mental health hospital, where they took people that had mental, and they incarcerated them and put them there on the wards, and they got help. It just wasn't bringing them in for 24 hours, find which drug will take care of it, and ship them back out. Not taking care of the problem that caused these people, to turn to drugs, alcohol, or some diverse hereditary psychological problems. And these are people that need help, that can be viable citizens. And just bringing them in, opening the doors, tanking them up with drugs, and then sending them back out. And now you got a kid that's taking the drugs he's supposed to be taking for a psychology problem, and then on marijuana or heroin or whatever, it just don't work. Yeah. And also, a lot of one of the problems right now, in talking to the street agents that I do, a lot of the kids start their drug course at home in the medicine cabinet. And the doctors prescribe to their parents Oxycontin or Valium or Xanax or whatever the heck, and you get kids off stealing out of the drug. Some are selling, some are using. And then the other part is, when this doesn't work and their problems aren't solved with drugs, then some of them turn to variant groups and occultism to change their activities.
Let me ask you this. Would you like to take a little commercial break right now, or would you like to get into the stuff about the West Memphis 3?
Let's keep going.
Okay.
I'm going to run out of steam and turn into a pumpkin.
I was afraid of that. Okay. So now, how did you get
I hope this has helped, by the way. Ed, I hope this is helpful.
No, thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of you coming on. Now, give us an idea of how you got invited into this case that created such a national attention with these documentaries, the case of the West Memphis 3. How did you become involved?
I had lectured in close to that area prior, and I had one of the good police officers from that area and probation officers had called me and sent me information almost a year in advance of this case.
Right.
And I had sent to them, this was the Church of the Dead Cow. How about that one?
Is that what it was called, the Church of the Dead Cow?
Yeah. And it was on the internet, and kids were involved, and then there were the officers were reporting that they were finding dogs that had been killed, and animals killed, and their blood missing. And I had wrote to them about 14, 15 things to do, and, talk with the school principals, talk with the school English teachers and art teachers to see what these kids are reading about. If there's a particular guy in charge or gal in charge of the group, to bring them in and find out what the strength is, what the weakness of the group is, what the heck's going on. Don't wait. Do not wait. Well, these officers could not get any help from the school people. And when I got a call from this officer, and when the case happened, and he told me that one of my concerns had happened, and kids had been killed. So.
Now, before the actual kids were killed, though, did these cops down there, did they found actual evidence of activity of satanic-type rituals, occult rituals?
There were, anytime you find animals, and I believe the term is sanguinated, that had their blood removed from them, and there are not teeth marks, but knife marks on the body, then you want to start looking.
Gotcha.
Especially if it happens to be near or on an occult holiday. And they had.
So then, when they found out that these murders happened, were you involved in the investigation at that point? Before the arrest? Okay.
No. In a crime, Ed, you've got to always look for the ability, opportunity, and the desire. Those three things must be completely reviewed. Okay? They had officers that looked at the ability and the opportunity because they were on crime scene and all of that, and they needed somebody to come in and bolster their desire. Of the three things, I only testified as to one. I only testified as to why some of these things happen. And I had looked at the book that Eccles had used. He had underlined some stuff about some things which he had basically had one of the wrong books at that time to use. And but you know, when you talk, when you see things underlined in red, somebody that's a psychiatrist or psychologist can come on your show and tell you what all that's about. But because one depended off onto Wicca, and which is International Cove and Craft Association, and no, there was nothing there. In fact, when I testified, I think there was a representative of the National Wicca Group present in the courtroom. So.
Now, you also described, too, that there were some full-blown Satanists that were in the courtroom as well, trying to stare you down?
There were, the parents were there, and there were a group of Eccles followers in the back, all dressed in black, in the courtroom. Yes.
Now, these were local people, or people who came in from out of town to support this? The
best I heard was they were some of the locals.
They were locals.
Yes, sir.
Now, after you testified, did the defense bring in another occult expert to say, hey, everything that Dr. Grifis here testified is incorrect, and he doesn't know what he's talking about?
Well, I have no knowledge of that. I know this.
Okay.
That prior to my time, the defense had used two defense witnesses, and I was most aware of those people, and the prosecutor never asked me. From the time I heard the case until the time I was ready to testify, I had only talked with the prosecutor the night before in a motel room. I saw no pictures. Well, I saw some pictures of the autopsy. I never saw the scene. And I was primarily only brought in to talk about occultism. That day, they had a psychologist talk about confessions.
Right.
It took him, I understand, 2.5 hours to answer a true-false question. Okay? They brought in a police specialist from Virginia that I had information on that was never served in the field, only as a policeman, and he showed up with a ponytail and earrings in the Deep South. Okay?
Right.
And the psychologist, by the way, had already been excommunicated from the American Psychological Association. So there had not been as good of, and they did not want me to go into anything at the crime scene, and the crime scene was kept from me. And I was just to talk about the books and the paraphernalia they got at the search warrant, and Damien helped us. What was interesting, I wrote a small little booklet on cults and law enforcement guide, okay?
Okay.
They had a copy of that on their desk, which was fine. While I'm testifying, Damien looks and he sees that, and he reaches over the defense table, gets us. Now, he's on his trial for his own life.
Right.
And he's reading my booklet. You know? Now, I started out at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and the defense counsel or the prosecutor did not ask me questions. Well, he asked me some questions, and I explained some stuff. And then the defense counsel come on. I was only on there for about 15, 20 minutes at the most, and had not testified as an expert. And on comes the defense counsel, and this guy comes up to me, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but he said, "How do you like to be called? How do you like to be introduced as?"
Right.
The great Dr. Grifis. Dr. Grifis, Captain Grifis, Assistant Chief. What's the greatest honor you have? And he's standing in front, within 6 inches of me, yelling at me. And I looked over the jury and I said, the greatest thing that I have been called, and I appreciate, is being called Grandpa. He went berserk. Okay. And he went right for the throat and asked this question probably 50 to 75 times. Is it true that the school you went to was not accredited by the state? Now, Ed, I have a question to ask you. Did you go to college?
Yeah.
All right. What school did you go to?
You know what? You're going to laugh, okay? I went to the College of Staten Island, but when people ask me, I say I went to CSI.
Okay. All right. Very good. Is that state accredited?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm sure it was.
There's where you bounced and blew yourself apart.
Yeah. Oh, you think it wasn't?
No. Colleges are not accredited by the state. Never have been. You probably were the Northeast accreditation. It was probably, CSI was approved and sanctioned by the state to grant degrees. Accreditation comes from a private organization, and some schools take a couple of years to get their accreditation. Some schools took, one school I'm aware of took 75 years to get its accreditation. Columbia Pacific was 2 years old when I started there. And it was in correspondence status for accreditation. And this guy kept going on me, and I finally looked at the judge and I said, would you be kind, Your Honor, if I could explain this, my own words, without being screamed at? And I turned to the jury and I explained to him, like I just did to you. And he says, is it true that the school you went to was not accredited by the state? Well, it certainly was accredited or granted the position to give degrees and was in a correspondence status, which is the first status for accreditation when I went there. This went on for almost 5 hours, over and over. Finally, the judge got PO'd, told the guy he wanted to see him in the office. You know, and I realized in the second day of law school, if you got a bad case, you go after the witnesses and try and kill them, you know, right, on the stand. And I knew what he was trying to do. But, you know, I would look to the jury and I'd answer my questions, and I was very level. This guy's yelling and screaming his head off. And inside the judge's chambers, you could hear the judge yelling and screaming at this guy and threatening to throw his ass in jail. He come back, and guess what he said? First question.
Same thing, right?
Is it true? And the judge threw down the gavel. And he looked at me and he said, how many cases like this have you handled? And I said, 12, 1,400. He said, you're serious? I said, no, sir, I wished I didn't, but I have. And I have them in my files in about 27 volumes of legal cabinets. He says, you are my expert. And this guy started yelling, you can't do this. He said, I'm going to throw you in jail. Now sit down and let him talk. And I looked at the jury, and I went out very peacefully, and I went, why kids? I found kids were involved in this stuff, what was going on, and also that Damien Echols' books were underlined with red, and I found the kids' things because, you know, in Crowley's works, he talks about sex with before they're 8 or it's too late. So the term 8 was of significance, and it was. Now I just read on one of the blogs that one of these people are putting out on that I don't know what the hell I was doing when I brought up the word 8. You know, yada, yada, yada. And when I testified, the people in the back were really restless. And I finished it up, and I said, Your Honor, is there anything else I can do? And the defense counsel, you know, didn't have much to say. I explained to him that I had known about this case a year ahead of time, that something wasn't done, and, you know, they asked me a couple questions about did I think anything unusual, and I said I was sorry to see that it took place and that the 3 boys, you know, had done what they done, but we had 3 8-year-old boys that had been killed, emasculated, boogered, any type of foul thing you can believe happened to them. And that was it.
So now, before that, had you testified as an expert before that?
Oh, yeah, about 6 times.
Okay. Now, also, too, a lot of people that are kind of novices and they're not familiar with courtroom procedures, especially as a lot of people were back in 96. This was like 93 it was, right?
Whenever, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
been-
back in those days, the early 90s, people weren't that familiar. They didn't have court TV on TV. You didn't have all these things, these TV shows like we have now. So at the time, a lot of people...
Well, Ed, I hate to tell you that when I come around the corner to go on the stand,
Right.
there was a street completely filled with television wagons. I never seen such a conglomeration.
But the
Okay.
point I'm trying to make, though, is that a lot of people at the time thought, well, you need to have a PhD in order to be an expert, to testify as an expert in court.
No, you don't.
Right.
You don't have to be anything. In fact, Ed, one of the things I want to tell you before I forget it, that I think is hilarious in this whole situation, is this. Columbia Pacific University and some of the students that went to school during the particular time that I did, in the time of my graduation, which was from 81 to 84, took the state of California to court over the degrees.
Yeah.
And had I known it at that time, which I didn't, and I'm not too darn sure that the case, because I only heard about this recently, Columbia Pacific degrees during the period of 81 to 84 have been substantiated by the California Supreme Court. Okay?
Okay.
So consequently, all the BS I went through, had I known it, or had it been done, but it was done afterwards, or done at that time without my notification. I only was apprised of this about 6 months ago. So,
But it's not a requirement.
you don't have to be
Right.
a PhD.
Of course not.
One of my best friends that I knew from a little town called Fostoria turned out to be, for the state of Ohio's crime lab, one of the best experts in firearms. And he barely got through high school, but he knew his firearms, he knew his marks and so forth, and testified all over the state of Ohio as an expert.
And
He was an expert's expert.
Yeah, and a subject like occult. Plus, you were a police captain. You've handled a million investigations. But,
Oh, well, yes, yeah.
But people
I did. And I will tell you this: when you get on the stand, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I will tell you, if I'm allowed to tell you a funny, then we'll go for it.
Okay.
And that is, I was getting ready to testify in a drunk driving case, and I walked into the courtroom, and everybody started laughing. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't have my uniform on right. I something fell, and that I exposed myself. 900 things went through my mind, and finally, even the defense counsel and the defendant all laughed at me. And I said, I said, okay, before I go, is there somebody who can tell me what I did wrong? And they said, well, we were testifying. One of the girls that was getting ready to serve on the jury, they asked if they knew me. And she said, yeah, we used to sleep together. And then she turned around and said, we were 3 and 4 months old, but we used to sleep together. So, I walked in, I didn't know what the hell, what happened, what relaxing, all of a sudden, this big laughter. And so, I had testified in court several times, but I never had, that. And I was prepared. And then prior to this case in West Memphis, I had been in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd been in Cleveland. I'd been in several other places where I testified as an expert.
Now,
and I had no problem.
In this case,
what?
Yeah, I know, because listen, in any defense case, the defense side is going to try and poke holes in the witnesses, and they're trying to come up with red herrings.
I expect that. And
right.
if you don't expect that, you're in bad shape.
But naive people who watch these documentaries see this and they think, "Oh my God, how could they?" There's no evidence because they see those little poking holes and then they fall for it. Okay, but now I want to ask you some questions.
One of the things they didn't see is while I was on that thing, there was a death threat come in.
Right.
When I was done testifying, in came the SWAT team with a bomb blanket, and I was taken out of court with the bomb blanket. You haven't seen that on television. They don't show you that on television. Okay?
Let me ask you this. Now, a lot of people will say, because Eccles was an advocate, a follower, a student of Crowley. Do you believe that to be true?
I don't like your term.
Okay.
You're using the term was.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
Is.
Right.
He carries the tattoos of OTO. Go ahead.
Oh, and you're familiar with the work of William Ramsey, who just came out with that information that actually while he was in prison, when he was claiming to be a Buddhist, when he was claiming to no longer be a Wiccan, that he was actually a member of the prison OTO group.
Yeah.
And that the local OTO group down there named their library after Damien Eccles.
Yes.
So there can be no doubt that Eccles is part of the OTO, even till today.
Yeah.
Now,
sure
what about people who say, hey, but there's nothing wrong with Aleister Crowley. Just because he called himself the Beast 666 and all this kind of stuff like that, that's all he was just a joke. he was kidding around. What is your opinion of this? Do you think that Crowley did or did not advocate sacrificing children?
One of the things that as a police officer, and I've said this in every lecture, every speech I've given, Damien Eccles' right to be a OTO member is protected by the Constitution of the United States. And if he is a believer under the amendments of the Bill of Rights, fine. However, under a couple cases, and by the way, one of the things that the defense counsel themselves, or not the defense counsel brought out, which I thought was amazing that they would do it. When you get a doctor's degree, Ed, you've got to write a dissertation for an ISP. And an ISP is an independent study project. I wrote a 285-page document in support of, and supported my thesis and dissertation by a review in front of 3 other members of the staff at Columbia Pacific. Anyhow, they in writing that, I had a legal section I used. Members of the FBI in Washington, D.C. helped me write that because I didn't want to abridge the rights of others to have a belief.
Right.
And under Cantwell versus Connecticut, while you have the right to believe, you can't abridge the rights of others while joining that belief. And in Beeson versus Davis, an 1895 case, or around that area, human sacrifice in the United States is not permitted. So, I cited those 2 cases. And the defense counsel is the one that brought up out of my dissertation that the FBI helped me with the legal part. I thought, geez, thanks a lot. I appreciate the support. When I said that, boy, the jury, he shot himself in the foot. And my only comment was they helped me because I didn't want to abridge somebody else's rights and belief. What do I think about Damien Eccles? Yeah. One of the things about this is, there are true believers. And then there are people. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Didn't he plead guilty?
I know, yeah. Well, plus,
Huh?
well, listen. You have one guy confessed up to 7 times. They've all made
No.
Yeah.
No, you're missing the point.
Go ahead.
Prior to getting out of jail, didn't he sign a statement of guilt?
Oh, absolutely. They all 3 did, yeah.
Okay. My comment, end of comment.
No,
I went there.
I don't think
I went there.
Yeah.
I did it, and they agree with me.
I don't think you can get more guilty. You had 2 juries that ruled they were guilty. They pled guilty, plus they've all made self-incriminating statements or outright confessed 7 times.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, have you ever had any doubt? Because now that all this uproar came out after the trial of this big defense fund and all this kind of different confusion, and ever have any doubt in your mind that this wasn't a good conviction?
No. No. And then when I found out that they signed the guilty thing,
Yeah.
What else can I don't need to say anything else. Now I read, or it has been brought to my attention that somebody said that turtles did this.
Right.
Turtles don't sign confessions.
Well, the turtle theory is that some of the injuries on the children were caused by turtles. And if you notice, Eccles has a turtle tattoo. He's gone out and gotten turtle tattoos on himself.
Who did?
Eccles.
Oh, did he?
Yes, and I believe that's a slap in the face to everyone who knows that these guys are guilty, and he's just laughing in our faces. Now, the supporters of these people, how do you read these people? Now, I'm sure you've had a lot of contact, a lot of exposure to these supporters of these 3 convicted killers. Now, do you take them as naive, as well-meaning, or perhaps that they're also involved in some kind of occult activity?
I walked off the stand, and since that time, I got little or no support from the prosecutors' things at all.
Really?
No. But I have henceforth seen, I think they're all judges now and whatever. But what gets me is this. I got slam dunked a couple times on the road, and I learned that there were, this time where I made the statement about the 2 officers and the firing. Right. I asked some questions. The night before the testimony, there was some questions about, do you think that this happened or that happened? And on a couple occasions, I told him that I felt whoever told him that happened was wrong. I felt, that frankly, I had done what I was there to do. I was correct in what I said. I was proven correct by them signing their own confessions. Even at the time of the murders, when a couple of them signed their own confessions.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have not paid any, if they don't like what I said and they believe Damien Eccles, God love them. Hopefully one of these days you'll come to your own senses, but that's your problem, not mine.
Let me ask you a question. Now, some of these celebrities that openly actually, you see them gushing over Eccles in public. People like Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson and these heavy metal guys, this guy Ed Rollins. It also appears that they have a fascination and an interest in the occult and Crowley as well. Have you noticed that?
Yes. And I think Ramsey did a good job in his book of delving into that.
Yeah, William Ramsey.
Yes. And I think he should be given credit for his research. I've seen a lot of cases being a policeman. I've seen a lot of cases being in a coroner's office, a lot of cases in a prosecutor's office, and so forth. I am not going to comment as to how the investigation of this case took place.
Okay.
But I will say, if these people, you look back and, I hear a lot from various people around the United States still yet today. And I try and do a good job to keep up that good old protect life, limb, and property of people in general. And when you see the people like Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson, are they there for show? Are they there for tell? Or are they there because of belief? I will defend the right to believe. I will never condone the right to kill. And if they want to believe in people like Eccles, let them.
Okay, well, when you see, not to mention any specific names, but when you see high-profile people declaring that, hey, they got the wrong guy, these guys are innocent, but we just so happen to have the same beliefs in this occult and satanic worship. Do you take it as a sincere belief that they think maybe they got the wrong guy, or do you think that they're just gullible, or do you think that they really, the reason that they're gushing over him is because they support the human sacrifices that were done, and they glorify it? Why would they be gushing over this guy?
All the nuts aren't in the nut house, so to speak, okay? They have the right to believe whatever they want.
Right.
I don't subscribe to their belief system, but I have to admit they have the right to do it, okay?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And the other thing about it is this. There's... I'd much rather see Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson do nice things for young kids rather than to be part and parcel of this type of activity. Okay?
Yeah.
Maybe they do, but under the persona, are they trying to develop a persona? Or one of the other questions that never comes up and never asked are these people SRA victims? Has anybody talked to them about that? I don't know if they have or not. I haven't.
Now, what about, there's been some stories about that perhaps Eccles came from a family of generational Satanism and abuse. And that girl he was dating, too, that girl Dominique Tier, her cousin was involved in vampirism up until this day. Have you looked into any of that?
I have stayed away from
Right.
West Memphis since this happened. Okay?
Gotcha.
Since the case was over. The last I heard, they found Damien Eccles was at Sybil Leake's place in Massachusetts. I think Russ found him up there.
Right.
And he wouldn't talk to him. I've been to you talk about bad karma. I was at Civil League's place. I went to the bookstore she has in Salem. Walked in the door, she is sitting there. She's standing there. I walk in with two friends. We were up giving a lecture in Boston. We wanted to go take a look at the place. Walk in, we didn't say a word. She hollered over to I have bad vibes of people that just came in.
Really?
Yeah. I went over and introduced myself. But, if that's what you believe, fine. Don't kill people. Don't maim people. Don't kill animals. Don't maim animals. That type of stuff. And what's thing about it is there's been now recently I'm getting calls from some police agencies because of some training. They have no recent training in this type of activity at all. And one of the problems is, one agent of the FBI stated that, there's no such thing as organized satanic abuse and yada, 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 and talked to a bunch of chiefs about it. And the chief said, well, if he says so, he's from the FBI. At the same time, Ed, I'm getting letters from agents from the FBI, including the director, thanking me for assisting their agency. What's interesting at the same time is this. I hate to admit this, but I thought I had some kind of an idea of something was going on with this occult activity. But you read on internet now about the ninth circle.
Yeah.
Have you?
No, I have not, no.
Get on there and take a look. I missed a lot. And it was more perverse than what I thought it was. If 1/200th of what is being written on internet about the ninth circle is true, then I missed a heck of a lot. 1/200th. And bring it up and take a look.
Yeah, I'd say it's on the childabuserecovery.com.
Yeah.
It seems to
and I would suggest that you talk with a couple investigators on that.
Well, who can you recommend?
I'm a newbie in this with this ninth circle. It was only brought to my attention 2 weeks ago by Russ, some of Russ's staff.
Yeah, I've had Russ Disdar on the show a couple of times, and also too. Then you sent me that information about Judy Beiningham, and I had her on a couple of weeks back.
Okay.
And Jim Rothstein I've had on.
Jim Russ has been doing kind of some heavy research.
Yeah.
Very heavy, and it's proven to be very interesting for him. And I think also if you would take, who was the gentleman you talked about earlier from the former NYPD guy?
Yeah, Jim Rothstein.
Put Jim Rothstein and Russ and a guy by the name of Greg Reed together, you'll get a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And they're not puffs of smoke. They're true and actual cases. Okay?
And these are all incredible people. Jim Rothstein is the mayor right now of a town up there in Wisconsin. He was a detective in charge of cases in New York City for years. Huge cases he was involved in. Russ Disdar is a pastor of a church. He was involved as a chaplain with the police department for years doing these investigations. These are all... Dr. Dale Grifis here was a police captain a captain of the police department, who's an instructor at a college, teaching criminal justice, an investigator for the DA's office. All of this nonsense about trying to discredit credible people and somehow giving credibility to whack jobs, who have confessed to murders. So we got to get our priorities straight here and get back to reality here.
Well, one of the things about it in closing is this.
Yeah.
When you, again, I see kids using guns, and guns don't kill people. The people that are operating them do. And one of the things about it is why. What are they trying to accomplish? What caused them to do this? What were they taking? What the situation? And we've got, being a parent has got to be a 24/7 job. And, I grew up in a latchkey house, but I had, when I come home from school or football, I had there was a note on the refrigerator, and I opened it up, and it said, dust this, run the sweeper there, do this, do that, study, and then if I got outside, the cop car would go by and was one of the guys that worked with my dad, and I'd run back in the house. I knew I wasn't where I was supposed to be, so, I got through it. And a lot of people my age got through it real well. And we didn't have why there was some of this type of stuff, I think, maybe back in those days, it wasn't prevalent of kids searching out. You're going to blame games, music, internet, books. When you point your finger at one thing, 3 fingers are pointed back at you. And Dr. Joel Norris made a statement in his book, we're raising kids that are not resilient. They get caught up in this type of stuff and they do things. And when they become illegal, it is up to the police, the educators, the ministers, everybody. It still takes a village to raise a kid.
And that should be our number one responsibility in life, is to raise decent, healthy, happy, well-adjusted kids into adulthood where they can be productive, and help others in society. That should be our main goal, every one of us, when we wake up in the morning, is to take care.
One of the greatest rewards I get is recently I attended a high school graduation, and this girl come up to me and gave me a kiss and a hug. Said, "Thanks, Grandpa."
Aww. Well,
so,
I got no grandkids yet. Okay, my daughter's only 14. I got plenty of time.
You got plenty of time, yeah. But you understand that people got to help people.
Yeah.
And I wish you a lot of luck with your program here, and yeah, sure. I took a big punch in the nose by Eccles and others. Would I do it again? If I had to, you damn betcha I would. But I sure wouldn't want to do it under the circumstances I had to go back through before.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think you got to share. I got a raw deal. I think that they took a couple of clips, they put it on a documentary on HBO. People that aren't familiar with the process of people testifying in court took this like it was some kind of they gave it some validity, they gave it some value, when really it has none. And when you're in court all the time, you see cross-examination of expert witnesses, and you can't just take one little clip out and say, "Oh, see, discredit everything," because it's just not the way it works. It's just not.
Well, the big thing is, I have learned. I took my I had 25 years of schooling, 12 grades, 12th high school, and then it took me 13 years to get through the rest of them. And all the cases I've worked and the experience and the reading and so forth, and I'm very careful what I say. And I just have to, people assume by the surroundings, that certain things happen, and they have the wool pulled over their eyes. And you have to stop, look, and listen. That's all I can say. It's been an honor to be on your program. I appreciate it. It's probably be the last interview I do. And
I was going to call you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I've been bugging you for a long time, and you are a man of your word. You promised you'd come on, so thank you very much again.
Ed, I give it from the heart, and I meant what I had to say. I still feel sorry for the 3 8-year-old boys that died.
Yeah, I've had a chance to meet some of their parents, and they're all still. No one's come away from this whole, complete, And to see these 3 punks gloating on TV and stuff like that, it's heartbreaking. But thank you, Dr. Grifis, for your work.
What do they think? What do they think about Damien?
Well, I've talked to Terry Hahn. Everyone thinks he's a bum. I think we all agree, except for a couple of them. I'm working on some interviews right now with the parents. We're going to be bringing them on in a series I'm doing here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, Godspeed to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on. Good night.
Bye now. Bye.
Okay, there you had it. Dr. Dale Grifis, expert on the occult, former police captain, 23 years in the police department, worked for the DA's office, worked as a college instructor teaching a course in criminal justice, traveled around the country advising different police departments, the FBI, on occult cases, and an expert in the occult, testified at the West Memphis 3 case, and these TV movie producers tried to besmirch him, and I think we've done something to set the record straight on what really went on down there. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And when you look at Eccles today, he could deny only once that he was ever a member of the OTO, and he was never involved in the occult, involved in Satanism. We can look at him today and see what he's doing, and the proof is in the pudding, like they say. We have some other West Memphis 3 shows, related shows coming up in this series. So keep your eye out for that. It's really difficult to do these shows because we can't announce who's coming on in the future because of the harassment and the stalking and all the crazy behavior with these fanatical supporters of these child killers. So we have to surprise you and just put them up in our member section. And the show will be up in rotation shortly as well. So, good night. I'll see you next week.